everyone. In this video, we are going to focus on the concept of audience and number one, why it is important for us to know who the audience of a certain text is. Why do we keep a certain audience in our mind when we are writing a text? And even if you are not aware when you start writing, you inherently are targeting your text towards a certain audience. So number one, why is it important to keep the audience in mind? Number two, understanding why we are always targeting a text towards a certain group of people. And number three, what does it matter? Why do we need to have an audience, and how to see who the audience is in a particular text? So the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that a text cannot address every single person. True, you can pick up literally any text at all. If you know the language, you will be able to understand what the text is saying. But there are certain things which cannot be translated. Things like culture, things like commonly understood symbols, phrases, ideas, okay? Those things are very, very important, right? So you might be able to understand what the text is saying on surface level, but to really understand, you have to be part of the target audience of a certain text, okay? So let's say if a person reads a text, a person from another part of the world, from South Asia, reads a text, an American text, which discusses slavery. And they don't know the history of the United States. They don't know what slavery is. So those concepts might be foreign to them. They would be like, if they read a novel in which slave narratives are being discussed, in which mistreatment or discrimination is being discussed, they will ask the question of why is this happening? They will try to understand it within their cultural concept, because they are not the target audience. But an American audience looking at that same text would be able to immediately see the historical, cultural meaning of the text. We'll be able to place it within context. We'll be able to say, yes, this text is assessing or accessing a certain part of our history and talking about a certain issue because you are aware of that issue. So, number one, keep that in mind. A text always has an audience, and it is important for you as young writers to understand that, because when you write your text, we have certain unstated assumptions. We write and we assume that the person who is reading whatever we have written will be able to understand what we are saying. So like when you wrote and I said things or commented on your writings with the words that this is good, but I don't know what your topic is. You need to explain your topic a little bit to me. Now what you were doing is, because you have submitted previous assignments to me about your topic, you assume that I already know what your topic is, and you simply address the joining the conversation part of it or the public resonance part of it. But you do not explain the issue or the concept that you are discussing, because this is an assumption on your part that I will remember. Now, I will definitely not remember every topic because I am grading so many assignments and so many people discussing their various topics. So the first thing is, if you keep your audience in mind, you have to remember that you have to provide certain background information. That is just between you and me, like the teacher-student kind of thing. When you write, you need to provide context every time. But other than that, if an American journalist is writing about a social issue taking place in America, she is going to, or he is going to discuss things in the context of what the American people will understand. Take the example of the essay that we studied this semester, and Mary Pauline's Cruelty, Civility, and Other Weighty Matters. Now, what she does is she talks about how weight is a stigma, how people are treated, but she mentions American culture. She mentions American eating habits. She mentions American extremely busy lives. Now, keep in mind, she is directing her essay very, very clearly towards American public. She discusses the culture. She discusses the culture that produces people who are overweight and then stigmatizes and condemns them, right? Now, a culture which is completely different, let's say the Japanese culture. The text is not addressing Japanese people. Why? I'm using the term Japanese is because it's removed from North America. It's a different kind of culture. They would have a different concept of eating different kinds of food, different kinds of everything. The reason I'm mentioning two completely different cultures is for you to understand that if someone reads it and has no idea of what fast food is, American fast food specifically is, they wouldn't be able to understand why is she addressing those things, why is she specifically talking about it. But the American audience would, because they are living within the culture. She is tapping on the ideas, she's tapping on the meanings in your mind, the context in your mind, so that she doesn't have to go further than that and explain all of those things, because you already have the context. So when you look at sentences and you see an author saying, this is our culture, this means she assumes that we have a mutual culture, that we understand that culture. I hope you are getting what I'm saying. And lastly, addressing why, how do you find it? Look for sentences within it, like I've already mentioned in the essay, where she will say, she will make assumptions that you understand what she's saying. She will say, this is the collectivity, this is the kind of thing being promoted on our television. Now, which television is she talking about? Now, if you immediately understand, yeah, this is happening in our television, this means you are the target audience. So yes, you cannot say anybody who is interested is the target audience. Oh, anybody can understand it. Yes, people can understand the words on the page, but people cannot understand every cultural, social context unless they are the intended audience. Even if she's bringing awareness about weight, and about how stigmatizing it is. But she is specifically addressing American people. She is an American. She wants American people to realize that this is a stigma, that there is an unconscious bias against people who are overweight. And so she uses examples and studies and everything from the American context. I hope the idea of audience is clear to you. When I say maybe be more specific about your audience, I mean, please read the essay again. See exactly what the author is mentioning. See the examples she gives. See the uses of words where she's using the terms like us, we. This means she thinks she's part of your culture. She's part of the same understanding, plane of understanding. And so she is talking to you. Please keep these things in mind. I hope you are able to better understand what audience is, why it is important. And lastly, I want you to keep in mind the audience that you want to address in your writing as well. When you write, think about it. Can somebody, if you want to be more inclusive, you will need to provide more context for the understanding of a certain phenomenon. Because maybe certain people who do not have the concept or the background or the cultural education that you have might not be able to understand what you're saying, right? So you will need to provide extra information to include a different kind of audience within the group that you want to address. So please keep in mind, the kind of information you put on the piece of paper is directly related to the kind of audience you want for yourself, okay? So I hope this video helps you understand what audience is and how you will be able to bring in changes within your own writing to help you make your work more accessible and basically, let's say, include maybe a bigger portion of society than it is currently including. Well, best of luck.